We are in the worst crisis of our lives. It takes a serious government. It takes a serious plan. It takes a plan that delivers today. It takes a plan that delivers investment. It takes a plan that grows this economy, stands up to Trump, and moves forward.
Change so that you can afford food and housing. Change so that you can live on a safe street. Change to put Canada first. Change is what we need now more than ever.
You have the power in this election to use that power to vote for New Democrats to say, no, I don't want to see cuts to health care. I don't want to see cuts to services. You've got the power to send us to Ottawa to hold the line for you, to defend what you care about.
Welcome back to Power Play. A clear representation there of closing arguments from all three major parties outside of Quebec in these final days of the campaign. The Liberals are pitching a steady hand, the Conservatives change, and the NDP a check on government power, not forming government themselves. The Bloc leader for his part this week said Mark Carney will form government in a bid to also pitch himself and his party as a check on government. What does it tell us about the state of the race as the campaign comes to its close? Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie are here. Back here, I should say, to talk about that. Lisa, I'll start with you. I feel, my sense is, and I could be wrong, the Conservative message around change, both delivered vis-a-vis the leader, but also through ads, has solidified in particular over the last 9 or 10 days. Do you think they would be in a better position if that message had been stronger at the start of the campaign?
No, I don't. I think we are where we are right now. And you can quarterback this as much as you want in terms of trying to figure out what we should have done at what point. The reality is that we are exactly where we need to be right now. We're talking about change. We're pointing out the fact that the Liberals have been in power for 10 years, and they're not really talking about that much change. In fact, you can look at their platform and see that it's very similar and the same people, all that stuff. So that all makes sense. I'll tell you what I'm hearing at the doors, though. As Benzie pointed out, I have been out in Ontario. I've been out in Cape Breton as well. And if I could sum it up in one kind of thought without hopefully ticking off all of my friends, what I am hearing from people who are not giving Conservatives their vote is that they like the Conservative policies, but they want Mark Carney to implement them. And I don't know how you defend against that.
What do you say?
Well, then you just go back and say the only way that you're going to get the policies is if you elect a Conservative leader.
Right.
But that's kind of what it comes down to. It comes down to the fact that they are, as they're discerning where their vote is going to go, they think that the policy platform is sound. What they're not thrilled about, unfortunately, is our leader.
What does that say to you, Brian?
Well, so look, I've just reacting on the spot, thinking out loud with just, our close friends here, no one else listening. I would say that, and I made this point before, Poilievre, I truly believe, has been one of the more effective leader of the oppositions. I would say one person on this panel was at top of the list as well, a very effective leader of the opposition. But I'll tell you that Poilievre, I think, was very good. And Tom has had to do this. I had to do this. And it's not an easy dance where you are trying to fulfill your role as the leader of the opposition and then at the same time basically audition, basically interview with Canadians, in my case, New Brunswickers, to become the premier or the prime minister, depending on the case. So it's not easy to strike that balance. And I think Poilievre was so effective at being the leader of the opposition, and he saw the numbers grow so large, and he saw nothing but momentum that I'm not sure that necessarily he or his team or both understood that they also had to start to give some moments of being prime ministerial, whatever that means nowadays, but showing his plan, showing what he's about. And I actually do think they've tried to do that a little bit in the campaign. I listened to a podcast he was on, some sort of random podcast, and I thought Poilievre did quite well. I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said on a policy front, but he came across trying to talk, I would say, not as a leader of the opposition. And he actually acknowledged the point that I'm making, by the way, that he said in that podcast when asked, like, what would you say to somebody if they said that you seem too aggressive? And that's the point he made. So I think he's probably aware of it, at least now, if he wasn't the whole time. So I wonder if there's a bit of that going on, because I do think he was an effective leader of the opposition, but people don't necessarily want that as their prime minister or their leader. And I think probably even more so, given the circumstances we find ourselves in. They want somebody that's going to feel like they're unifying, that it's going to be a leadership that brings people together. And when you're so effective as leader of the opposition for 2 years, maybe it's hard to build that brand.
Tom, I wanted to get you on the NDP as well, because we played that clip of Jagmeet Singh. A lot of questions directed to him today were, what happens if you lose official party status? Will you resign? Like, we're not even, you know, in the final few days of this campaign. Those are questions you expect, like, after the election, for example. What does it say to you that he is basically, since week 2 of this campaign, being dogged by those questions?
It's extraordinarily difficult. He's a warrior. He's put on a good fight, but it's been an election where there are only 2 parties that are fighting it out, duking it out. We've said it a couple of times, but it's worth reiterating that in 2011, when Mr. Harper won his majority, he had 39% of the vote, which is exactly where Poilievre is now. The problem for him, of course, is that the Liberals have been eating the NDP vote, and believe me, in Quebec, eating the Bloc vote, something fierce. And it's just been propelling them up. They have an effective, efficient vote. It's well spread out, and they're eating, you know, taking in that many votes from the other parties. Hearing Mr. Singh say that reminded me of what I heard Mr. Blanchette say on Sunday night. It was his turn on Tout le monde en parle. And he admitted, as you correctly pointed out, Vassy, that Carney's going to win. And now that gets very tricky for everybody, because the Liberals are out there trying to slowly, you know, push, yeah, things are going well, but nothing's set in stone yet, and don't take a chance. And we're not really doing that well because they want people to come and vote. And the other parties are saying, no, it's a done deal. So send some of us there to try to hold the line, to try to block them. That's the Bloc Québécois pitch. They're not going to care about Quebec stuff. Carney doesn't care about Quebec. Send a few more of us. The Bloc right now is at 35 seats. There is a real possibility for them to drop to between 15 and 20. And if I just said 15, then I'm starting to talk about the 12. That is the magic number to be an official party, which they are. Mr. Singh knows that that's his real, you know, difficulty right now, is that number 12. He's got to ensure that he gets that. Look at where he's going to be. He's going to be in Edmonton. He's got, you know, he's going to hit every riding that he can where he thinks he can shore up the vote and hold on to a seat. There are some longtime NDP MPs who are in trouble. Some of them decided, turns out quite wisely, that this might be the election to step down. But Mr. Singh knows what the result's going to be. I think he's serene in his understanding of what it might mean for him, and I'm not getting any indication that he's intent of fighting to stay on. He's done a good job for the time that he's there, but I think that the party's going to go through a real difficult time if and when if the result is the one that's being predicted in the polls. The party will go through a difficult time, especially if they do lose party status.
Just very quickly, if those results do bear out, do you think he can stay on as leader?
No, and I'm not getting any bead off him, any bearing off him that he's intending to stick around and to hold on to it. You know, I'm getting the sense that, you know, his family, he's been working out of Ottawa with a riding in British Columbia and the core of his family support in Toronto. I think that the guy's, he's paid his dues. And I think at some point he's just going to be able to leave with his head held high, especially if he can hold on to the 12 seats. And we'll see whether or not that works out for him.
The story of the NDP, Benzie, in this is, like, it's hard to overstate its significance, right? Because as you were pointing out prior to the break, Harper won a majority with 39% of the vote. Poilievre has expanded the Conservative base, right? To hit from, you know, the percentages that Andrew Scheer and Erin O'Toole got. It's just that the NDP, I think in 2011, and someone can correct, I think they were at 30%. Yeah. And now they're at 10. And all of that support has migrated to the Liberals, which has produced such a different outcome if, in fact, the polls are borne out on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, Vassy, one of the most stupid things, the most moronic things that the Tory campaign did was in the pre-RIP period spending millions of dollars on advertising, attacking quote-unquote sellout Singh, and the Jagmeet Singh ads that they ran last, I guess last fall. I still don't understand what they were thinking, because it's a three-dimensional chess game when you're the Conservatives in this country, whether you're in Ontario or federally. You need a strong NDP or strong-ish NDP to siphon votes from the Liberals. So why you would want to demonize the New Democratic leader just because he wouldn't support you in defeating the Trudeau government of the day? I'm sure when the postmortems of this are written, and some of them will be very ugly, mark my words, because I'm going to be writing some of them. I can tell just from what people are already telling me that they're not going to be, it's not going to be a pretty picture. One of the great chapters will be, why did the Tories attack the New Democrats when they didn't really need to?
Lisa, you may have a better answer from the people I have asked that question of. It comes from, like, I know this may sound weird, but like it comes from a place where they are very critical of the NDP. They vehemently disagree with the approach that Jagmeet Singh took and the party took. They vehemently disagree with the positions that they, upheld of the Liberals that allowed them to stay in power. Strategically, I totally understand what Rob's pointing out, but I think my guess is that that's where it comes from.
But you also have to remember that we not only compete with the Liberals in seats, we compete with the NDP for seats. So you kind of have to take both leaders at what they are in order to be able to take away some of the vote. And quite frankly, I think Pierre has been very successful in getting some of those lunchbox votes to come over to the Conservative. Look at all of the endorsements that he is getting from unions. I mean, I never would have expected that would have happened in 2015 by any means. In fact, it was quite the opposite. And that kind of vote was drawn also from the Liberals, but a lot was coming from the NDP. And we're competitive in ridings in Northern Ontario that we were not really as competitive before. So I do think, with all respect to what Rob said, I do think it was successful in getting some of the vote, but maybe it was just a little too successful. Look, yeah. I think we should have, now that I know that Mr. Trudeau left in January, maybe we shouldn't have been so hard on him either. I don't know. Maybe we should have kind of like lulled him into some kind of semblance of calmness that he was going to make it through the spring, if only. I mean, we'd be in a different world right now. But hey, effective advertising is effective advertising. And you know what? Maybe the Conservatives got a last kick in the can between now and now on Election Day. Like I said before, I'm a Leafs fan, so I'm an ever optimist.
we got to be in that respect, Lisa. Yes. Brian, last word to you on
Leafs.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to being an effective leader of the opposition in the sense that they wanted Trudeau to go. They wanted the carbon tax to be eliminated. They were sort of dumping on Singh, and they got maybe what they wanted, but as Lisa was sort of jokingly saying, maybe too much. One of the things that I always thought, though, that they were doing that for, and maybe I was completely wrong, I find on this panel we're often trying to figure out what people are thinking. My sense was always that they were actually trying to also push Singh to just bring down the government. Like it felt like they were trying to apply pressure, right? So that they feel it at the doorstep, and I'm sure they were hoping Singh's MPs, the NDP MPs, would come to Singh and be like, we got to get this government to fall. Like I think they were trying to just get the election, maybe to Lisa's point that they would have gone with these circumstances that they were used to for the sort of year and a half before everything sort of changed in the last 3-4 months. And look, I think at the end of the day, we find ourselves here. It feels like I've always felt like after the long weekend, things would probably be pretty cemented. The polling seems to have stayed pretty stable throughout the campaign, frankly. 7 million people have already voted. So I think, Benji, not to paraphrase you, not to put words in your mouth, but I think, as you mentioned, it'd be hard to think anything would completely shift things over the next few days. But anything can happen. 24 hours in politics is a long time.
Yeah, and we've got 6 of those 24-hour periods. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the conversation tonight. Our front bench, Brian Gallant, Lisa Raitt, Tom Mulcair, and Rob Benzie.